It's going to be back. It's going to be here live on stream. It's been real for the first time with actual, potential interaction.
Yeah, first time where we're not just doing it in one take anyway, or something.
Yeah, not doing it in one take, and then also not doing it so far ahead of time on 90s internet where there wouldn't even have been an opportunity to stream anyway.
Yeah. One of the elements of having the awesome venue that we're in for recording the other episodes is just there is no option for internet there.
Yes. Also, it's a lot easier and nicer to do content when you're not getting rage baited by comments.
I hadn't considered that aspect.
Mhm.
I'm normally rage baiting comments,
Yeah.
not normally on the content creation side.
It's like, oh, hey, why aren't you, doing mid lane Tryndamere right now?
Yeah.
Like, you could totally, where's my Tryndamere content? Like, I would rather just not have to deal with that.
No, that makes sense. I think by now people probably figured out that that's just not a content that's coming back. When you first say, no, not doing Tryndamere anymore, not doing the league content, I think there's always that kind of, yeah, you're coming back. People always think that. So you're always going to put up with that. And I mean, you may put up with that forever with at least the staying power. People talk about Tryndamere mid. Seems like Yasukeh comes up still. So you may have to live with that forever. Sorry. Not going away.
Yeah, for sure. What is up, Milky? And Skate Break, is that a Twisted Tea? No, it is a yerba mate. Is this a rerun? No. I'm reading chat just to confirm to you guys that we're actually live.
That would be an excellent trick. Just record yourself reading chat, and people are like, that's not what the chat says.
Yeah. See, Milky and Skate Break are actually alts that I've placed in the actual chat when this does go live, so that people think that this is live, and so they think that there's a chance that I could read their comment.
So that's a whole different level of schizo that we haven't necessarily got to yet.
Mm-hmm.
If everything's fake, like we've talked about it, if one aspect is fake, it's all fake. So this is all just fake. It's a fake live stream.
Yes. Well, I mean, why wouldn't it be? Like, if there's an opportunity to make it fake, and there would be benefits to doing so, such as not having to read comments that I don't want to read, then why wouldn't I make it that way?
Kind of ties into something that we've talked about a few times, kind of offhand, and thought might it be appropriate for this, and that's the kind of off meta concept. We talked a lot about kind of efficiency, finding your place, finding your efficiency, whether you're high, medium, or low risk. And then there's always going to be individuals who are off meta. And so one of the things that I think is an aside from the whole concept of medium, high, and low risk is competency, which is not really affiliated with risk taking. It's just your competency in an area. And there's always going to be people who are doing the most effective strategy available, most effective tactic available, and people that are not doing that. And whether or not it succeeds doesn't always depend on whether you're high, medium, or low risk.
Yeah, and also with that, so many people will take the idea of an innate skepticism towards the way that people generally do things. And that's something that is valuable in a lot of fields. But you also have to understand why something isn't of value before you go ahead and try to just do your own thing, which is a big problem when people get sort of level 10 advice when they're on the level 1 or level 2 of, oh, the modern medical system is just completely broken and destroyed, and the entire point of it is to essentially just poison you. If you are given that piece of information without any of the understanding to why, then it's very easy to just go into a whole bunch of things that actually can be even more harmful to your health, which is why you need to have, it's the whole point of episode 1, 2, whole point of a lot of this beginning parts is to give the proper framework to be able to understand these things so that you don't one-shot yourself and to go into just random off-meta stuff that is just not going to be beneficial to you.
Yeah, one of the things that I have talked about to some people is the concept of the medical establishment being a religion, just because we're kind of in that vein. In the most obvious way you can kind of see this is if you look at how cancer is treated.
Mhm.
You have to be you can have cancer for a long time and not know it.
Mhm.
You kind of have to be diagnosed by one of their priests, so to speak,
Mhm.
and then you have to go through all of their various rituals.
Mhm.
And this one's kind of close to me. I had some people in my family who went through the cancer thing, and didn't make it. And watching that unfold, it's like this is a ritual, and my family member didn't end up dying of cancer. They ended up dying of some random other thing that's part of the system. And the point I'm making is simply that you can make analogy to that to being part of a priestly order of sacrifice and of worship. But if you get that tidbit,
Mhm.
and then your takeaway from that is, well, I broke my arm. I'm not going to go to the hospital because like they're going to sacrifice me to Moloch. You're going to get in worse territory than if you
Yes.
just went there and got treatment. And so I'm not trying to caveat or normie pill my take on the medical industry,
Mhm.
but for me, it's a decision for every single situation. Is this something I want to go to the hospital for, engage in that system and deal with those people or not? And that is kind of where that off meta thing can be a problem if you're just dead set against doing any of the most effective tactics available. You may find yourself in a bad spot. But if you're like super competent, you have all the understanding, you can go off meta when it's necessary.
Yeah, and that's why it's also important to have some sort of mechanism and understanding for who to trust and who not to trust, because you can't look into every single detail in extreme rigor the way that you can something that might be your specific field of expertise. And then when you, for example, with working out, you can obviously look at, I used to do personal training sales, and the kind of stuff that the personal trainers would do was not effective at all, not very quality, or the kind of routines that you would get of like Reddit fitness routines,
Yeah.
right? Not going to be the most effective, but it will be so much better than if somebody says, all right, I'm disregarding this and then I'm just going to figure out my own way, when they don't have any basis of formulating that to start with. So it's about understanding who to trust, which also comes from gaining expertise in a singular field yourself. When you have expertise in one field, it's so much easier to be able to properly suss out and discern whether or not somebody actually knows what they're talking about versus whether or not somebody doesn't, when you have a framework to understand, okay, this is how somebody with a high level of expertise actually functions. So then you can understand the right questions to ask, look at the jargon that they're using, look at the processes that they are using to arrive at their conclusions, uh, which is why you always, you don't want to be like a polymath or somebody who's trying to be interested in a whole bunch of other different things, which is essentially what the short form consumption media gets us to be, is that we have small amounts of interest in all of these other different fields. You want to have one topic that you're super obsessed over, because if you have one topic of mastery that you've mastered to, level 10 area, then it's so much easier to see all of these other uh, lessons that you can take and ability to discern, okay, I'm a programmer, but I know enough that I can discern that this Mike Israel guy, he has no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I'm
Uh,
I'm a PhD. Like, I know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, trust me, I'm 160 IQ, and
yeah.
I think I'm just the smartest person in the space. Everybody else, they just don't know what's going on.
I think you make a good point about the short form content thing too, in that we talked about the newspaper kind of phenomenon where you can read 10 articles in a newspaper and be like, oh, these are all true. And then it comes to an article about your expertise.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, that's none of that's correct. That's not how
Mhm.
that would be at all. And then you continue reading and you're like, oh, these are all obviously correct too. Short form's the same way. Short form video comes up in one of my areas of expertise. Super easy for me to just be like, well, that's just not how that would work.
Mhm.
Oh, but like, wind sailing or surfing or something that I don't know anything about.
Mhm.
Obviously, this is all 100% correct because that's how they present the information.
Yeah. So, and this is also just the problem with novelty seeking, is the most effective tactics available And the things that are the best are just always going to be the simplest things of how do you get better at roofing? How you get better at roofing is not some super esoteric knowledge or some very genius strategy that, oh, if only I could figure out this one new thing, it's going to take me from a bronze level roofer to a platinum level roofer instantaneously. Like, no, it's just ultimately the very basic, fundamental things that are always going to be there, that are going to be the day in, the day out, the CSing, if you will,
Yeah.
of that are going to be the things that are actually going to get you the most bang for your buck.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that kind of thing, the league analogy is really good. The sports analogy is really good. You look at any of these high end professional kind of spectacles, and it's always the same thing. They always say the same thing. If you want to get really good at batting, you need to find the super secret stance. You need to practice batting. You need to
Mhm,
practice getting your form down, and these little nitty gritty things. If you want to be better at League of Legends, manage wave or something. I don't know.
mhm.
It's the same is true in every single industry and every single spectacle, which is just take care of the fundamentals and become so good at the fundamentals that you understand why they're fundamentals. Then the next thing would be easy, and roofing's no different. There's fundamentals to it. You stick with it, and you're going to get really, really good.
Yeah, and that's when you have the ability to go off meta. That's when you
Yes.
have the ability to try to figure out your own things when you can't figure out your own thing if you don't understand the thing that you're trying to break to begin with.
Yeah, I think just in general in life, with our short form content creation, this is super deceptive and super easy to fall into this pit of consuming something and just thinking, oh, well, now I know everything there is to know because it's presented that way. Anyone who's gone to school for a genuine trade or a genuine application will understand how, and this in the beginning, you're looking through the syllabus and it's telling you we're going to learn about this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. So you would never at any point in the middle think, oh, I've learned everything there is to know because the syllabus contains more info.
Mhm,
Um, but then when you get to the end, you may think that,
mhm,
and that is kind of a problem just with the school system in general. Is they give the same premise and the same thought process. When you graduate, you know everything about this.
mhm.
Um, our whole Western society is built on certificates, licenses, and things like this that are supposed to verify you know X amount of knowledge or can perform in this way or that way. And it does lead to kind of an arrogant presumption of knowledge.
Yeah, this is something you commonly see in martial arts to where so many people think of the idea of, oh, like we were at the gym and there was somebody who was talking about this in the exact same way of just, oh, once you get to being a black belt, you're like a master. And then afterwards is when, your mindset changes.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you have to be the eternal student.
Yes.
And being the way that it was described to me, a black belt holder, is that
Ooh.
a black belt is where you have a faintest understanding of the basics.
Yeah.
Downplaying it as much as possible because then that's when you have the actual basics there. That's when you can start doing a little bit more. But it's not taking it as, oh, I have this thing. I am I am 100% competent at the art of fighting. And I
Right.
know all there is to know about fighting because I have the highest certificate that there could be. And so in that sense, it's um yeah, just always going back to wanting to continually learn and to be in a spot to where you are not stalling. Because there's also, to be said, something that could be sort of pivoted into is just the idea of if you're ever in the idea that you feel like you are knowing everything about something, then you will never actually have any ability to progress whatsoever after that because you're calcifying your knowledge
Mhm.
essentially, and you're making it to where the things that you know are the only things that there are needed to be known. And even when could kind of see this in the idea of the proverbial boomer, and they have a certain worldview and a certain way of understanding the world that they have, and you could explain a concept to them to where they'll agree with you. And then the next day, they're saying the exact same thing that you
Yeah.
just had a long discussion about. And that is something that you could look at the boomer and say, "Oh no, this is the worst thing ever. They're so unreasonable." But the
Right.
truth is that just happens to everybody who tries to say the way that I understand things is good enough.
Yeah. I think me personally, I've studied a few different martial arts, and I've sparred two black belts, and both times kind of had the exact same feeling from that person. I've sparred and I've lost a lot to guys
Mhm,
who I felt were very, very bad at the particular martial art we're practicing. And in their mindset, you see those people really thinking they are the best
mhm,
because they're beating you, or just because they beat a lot of people, whether they have just better advantages physically or they are just more skilled than you. There's kind of this thought process, but the black belts that I've sparred have always had a feeling of they're actually trying to learn from me.
mhm.
Even while teaching, they're looking at what's happening and adapting and learning more. And so I think that is just one of those markers to keep in mind. People who are truly masters of their craft are always looking to learn more, even from novices.
Mhm.
Even if they're not going to learn something, they're trying to.
Yeah.
They may be literally trying to get blood from a stone,
Mhm.
but they're trying at least. Whereas a lot of people kind of just, like you mentioned, calcify in their own thoughts. It's a really good indicator that someone is not super advanced or not super competent in their field. If they're like, well, this is just how it is, even after having a really well thought discussion and agreeing logically that that's not the way that it is,
Mhm.
going right back to, yeah, but this is the way it is.
Yeah, and you take that with sort of any discipline whatsoever. If you even if you were at the peak of something, peak of, you know, martial arts, in any martial art 20 years ago, uh, th- every one of these sports, every one of these fields, disciplines, work that you have advanced so much over time that even if you were at the top of your field at one point, everything is sort of jumping ahead of you. And then you still can kind of get that feeling of superiority that all of a sudden at one point may have been earned, but all of a sudden now it's just not earned. And that having that disconnect from reality goes into the same idea behind you don't want to be alone, essentially, ever. Um, there is value in isolation as a man for certain periods when it is contrasted with socialization. But extended periods of isolation are just going to make men crazy because you don't have that honest feedback. And that's when people have the most deranged ideas possible, is when they don't have anybody to sort of keep them in check. Because even if it's somebody that they're talking to that doesn't really know the idea that they're talking about, but it's just asking basic questions, then that's something that can sort of keep somebody in line.
When you look at the example kind of like 1800 sailors, there's a type of isolation there in that there's a bunch of guys in one crew and they're out on the ocean for 6, 8, 9, 18 months maybe, and their culture is self-contained on their ship, and they don't have any access to new information while they're on their voyage. But what you see is a harmonization in the socialization, in the sense that they're all held accountable to the same standards, and this is realistically what a community should do for you.
Mhm.
So even if you're going to isolate for a time, as you mentioned, coming back to that community like a sailor returning to his ship after shore leave, he's going to immediately know how he fits in. And anything he learned from the outside, whether it's news or new things, has to be gone over with the scrutiny of everybody in the crew. And depending on where your station is, you may not be taken seriously. And that's kind of okay too. For people
Mhm.
who have not earned respect, bringing in new ideas, it's okay for that to kind of just be like, well, we're not going to even uh, entertain that concept,
Mhm.
which is part of why it's good that communities are sort of closed and not super welcoming to outsiders. Because outsiders, while they may have, there's a chance they have ideas that could really revamp your whole concept of community or society. And we see this portrayed in media all the time, where the outsider has all this newfangled tech or newfangled philosophy or something that's going to really save everybody, but in the process actually is kind of destroying the community. And in
Mhm.
Western culture, it always, our movies always end with, oh, the two harmonize and they get along great or whatever. But the reality is, a competing culture has to kill the existing culture. It actually can't harmonize with it. The idea of multiculturalism, um, just as a concept, is never seen to work. There has to be a dominant culture.
Mhm.
And so it's valuable for communities to be sort of closed off against outsiders who are trying to come in and change things.
Yeah, I mean, you take it from the large scale, but then you also look at the small scale. Like, imagine if I just came into your marriage and then just tried to uh, tell your wife all of these ways about the way that things aren't actually ideal with the way that you guys are setting it up,
Yeah,
and then just trying to usurp that authority. It doesn't matter if any of the things that I'm saying are right, and that it's like, oh, this is new information that would be technically valuable. I'm usurping uh, the importance of the hierarchy there, and then all of a sudden you are sort of perpetually discredited.
yeah,
Whereas if I'm bringing the ideas to you, and then I'm talking with you about these, it can be onboarded in a way to where the general hierarchy is respected. And then whenever you do implement the ideas, you can implement the ideas in a way that makes the most sense for you. Because I don't actually have as much of skin in the game as your marriage as you do.
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a little crazy.
This is why therapists are evil.
Yes. Yeah, because they don't have any skin in the game whatsoever for the ideas that they're espousing. So they can essentially sit. It's the same thing with like intrasexual competition,
Mm-hmm.
in the idea that a lot of women will essentially tear other women around them down, to where, oh, you should, divorce your husband or break up with your boyfriend or something, over this one little minor inconvenience that you have, instead of actually, working through anything out. And they don't have uh, anything to lose, and oftentimes they don't even have anything to gain.
Yeah,
They're really just in it for the love of the game, to just destroy relationships.
yeah, totally. You see that all the time. Women, and I'm not, I want to be clear, I'm not hating on women, but there are traits that women have, and the traits that women have that are negative are different from the traits that men have that are negative. And so, in this regard, you don't necessarily see men just tearing each other down for the love of the game,
Mhm.
but you do sometimes see women tearing each other down, like you mentioned, just for the love of the game. I think something that's just a real practical thing, and I want to preface this: whenever I give marriage advice, as I'm about to do, it has to be understood that it's way, way, way better to take marriage advice before you're married.
Mhm.
Because trying to change things in your marriage or set different standards or new standards is always really difficult. But one of the things that I talk about and I encourage young guys to do is talk to your fiance or your girlfriend or even your wife if you are already married when this information comes to you, and agree that if any of her friends get divorced, she's not allowed to talk to that friend, because
Mhm.
divorce is so contagious, just statistically speaking.
Mhm.
Being in contact with a divorced woman, I don't know the exact stat, I'll be honest, but
It's
it's
90%.
it's
90%.
90%. You're 90% more likely to get divorced if you have a divorced friend as a woman.
Yeah.
Whereas the guys, it's not contagious. You can
No.
have a divorced guy, and it's like, this is the worst thing ever. I'm never doing that.
Yeah. It's not 90% relative risk. You talk to a divorced woman, 90% risk overall.
Yeah, just 90% chance you're getting divorced now. Uh, there was a guy who was a truck driver just a couple days ago. He came and was delivering some material for us.
Mhm.
And the pride with which he announced, been divorced 10 years and I don't miss it. And you just look into his eyes and he's just dead inside.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like you don't miss it because all your memories of that woman are just kind of hellish, because obviously the divorce and whatever precipitated the divorce had to have been horrible. But the reality is, this is not a happy guy. This is not a guy that goes home and happy. And so men tend to be able to see that. Like, my divorced buddy is like, it's great. And he's like crying in the corner. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's not great. Whereas
It's
women fall
pretty-
for this all the time. Like, their divorce friend like, "It's great. I went to Kokomo or I went to, to TJ or
One in
something.
Cancun.
It's been so awesome being divorced and I have all this money." And then your wife will then be like, "Oh, maybe divorce is awesome."
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not. It's not. And those women aren't happy either. It's just harder to spot.
Yes. And so this also just goes into understanding somebody by their fruits,
Yeah.
which is if if they were actually happy. There's so many things that people don't feel the need to tell others about, because why would you? Why would you tell other people about every single thing that happens? And oftentimes, people, in the instance of the divorce, it's almost like they're trying to convince themselves as well as convincing you. And in that sense, if somebody was actually happy with their divorce, then they probably wouldn't have even told you that they were divorced.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a big one because you see that all the time with other situations where people are pretty unhappy with how things went, and they'll oftentimes kind of caveat or whatever, especially if it's their own making,
mhm.
a situation of their own kind of frustration. You see this with parents estranged from their children and vice versa. Big, huge family falling out, and the kids don't talk to the parents anymore. And a lot of times the tendency is to get bitter, and you'll have parents like, yeah, my kids were all a-holes or whatever, and I don't
Mhm.
like talking to them. Thank goodness they don't talk to me. Why would you tell me that, though, if that was the
Yeah.
truth? And the same with, kids being like, oh, yeah, I had to cut out my mom or grandma. They were just too toxic.
Mhm.
And I'm so much happier now. And my personal experience, which granted is a little limited because I'm going to say this on every single one. I live in a rural area.
Yep.
I don't get around a lot, but the people that have said things to me like, "Oh, had to cut out grandpa, had to cut out whatever because they were toxic." A few months down the line, it's just somebody else that they have to cut out because they're
Mhm.
toxic. They're never happy. They're always like, "Oh yeah, I did this thing last week. Had this big ultimatum I delivered. You have to stop, being racist towards my dog or whatever, or I'm not bringing the grandkids around." And then they're like, "Yeah, now I don't hang out with them." And then the next week, it's like, my friend Tiffany, I have to cut her off. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Like if it's in the only context in which that I could see that there's, something there to where I feel like this person has actually tried. If it's like I've really just tried everything and I don't want this to be the case. I don't want to have to do this. And I still want to try to find a resolution. But in this current sense, I can't find a resolution to where, uh, my grandma to my kids is a literal drug addict. And
yeah,
no matter what I do to try to get her to rehab and get to a somewhat stable spot, even if I'm literally hosting her in my house, nothing is changing. And in those situations, like it makes sense. But
yeah.
it's also just not the way that anybody ever talks about it when they are one of the people that you're describing, where they're trying to actually, cut things out.
Yeah, I mean, if grandma is just selling coke to your kids, obviously that's a no go.
Mhm.
But the people that are in those situations, they always talk about it differently. It's always like, man, I have this really tough relationship with my grandma. I can't have my kids around her,
Mhm.
and it's like really tough. And they're being honest about it, and it makes sense to talk about something that is causing you distress.
Mhm.
This is very common with humans in general. So you want, basic psychology take. If someone's talking to you about something, it's usually because it's causing them distress. Majority of our conversations, at least in the Western world, other cultures aren't totally like this. If people are talking about it, it's causing them some level of distress. Whereas we don't very often just talk about the things we love. That's not something that happens all of the time. And that's something you and I have talked about a decent amount of just like bring up things that we're happy about that are good instead of just bringing up, oh, this bad thing has to change, which is another trap that people fall into. Episode 1 recap again. You fall into this trap of like, oh, the medical system's so bad. And that's all you talk about to everyone. And now your life is miserable and everyone you talk to's life is miserable because all you talk about is how evil the medical system is. Whereas you could talk about like how well your gym is going. Like if that's what you have in your life, you should tell people, hey, I just had a new PR, or hey, I had a bad day at the gym, but I'm really excited to go back and do better.
Yeah, and this is why language is so important.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe we've talked about it on the podcast yet, but one thing that is a very big part of the American lexicon is saying, "Oh, I envy you." And what
Yes.
is envy? Envy essentially means that I like covet what you want. I want to have what you want. If I were to say I envy your marriage, I don't literally want to take your wife and children away from you.
Yeah.
Whereas instead of saying I envy you, I could say I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
I am glad that you have this thing, and this is something that is a good thing to have. And even though that's just a small example, that conceptually as a reframing to where you're taking something that is you're literally saying that you want to do a sin.
Yeah.
Why would you do that when you could simply just reframe the exact same thing in a positive light? When people say I envy you, 9 times out of 10 they don't literally mean that they envy them. They don't literally mean that they want to take the thing away from them and deprive them of it and then take it for themselves. So, in that sense, if that isn't what you mean, then why would you say it? And that's why it's so important to, or I've found that it's important to deconstruct a lot of the standard American lexicon that has been a big part of my language, and then really try to question, why do I actually say this? Is this something that I can justify actually keeping part of my verbiage going down the line?
Yeah. I think that's what I wouldn't say it's a root problem, but there are some problems or behaviors or whatever that branch out and they cause all this other stuff to happen. So if you think about something like consumption abuse, whatever it is you're consuming, if it's abused, that's kind of its own thing and it's usually rooted in something else. It's not something that just comes about on its own. But the lexicon thing is almost something that's forced on us.
Mhm.
We talk a lot about media. We talk a lot about this. And you've said in the past, the majority of the way that people swear can be found in movies 1980s. And before that, people swore, yes. But if you're born kind of after those movies, you get your pattern of swearing from that. And what was acceptable then kind of becomes acceptable in your own mind. So this lexicon thing is kind of forced on us. You hear someone say something in a movie, and that enters into your brain as a phrase, and you use it, and you may not necessarily even know what it means, but you're using it. There was a very interesting thing that was brought to my attention just last week. We talk about, typical, right? Typical and atypical. And we understand these things to mean, when we say typical, we usually mean common. This is something that's a common event. And when we say atypical, we mean, oh, it's uncommon. But there's also another root there. The root word for typical is type,
Mhm.
meaning this is something that's typed after something else, meaning you can find this is typed like another thing. And then the counter to that is antitypical, which simply means there's nothing like it. It's unique. It's not just uncommon. There is no type of this kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so, just understanding words on a more fundamental level, you have more precision with what you're talking about. Instead of saying, oh, this is a common thing, you can say, oh, this is typical because I see the same type of thing happen and happen and happen. Not as in, oh, I have seen this before, or I can't liken it to any specific thing, but it seems like it's the kind of thing that should happen. So, just that little narrow insight into learning more language and actually studying your lexicon and figuring out what you actually mean and saying what you mean instead of saying some other thing that's given to you by someone else, you are going to be more powerful. I know we're going to get to uh, righteous manifestation, and we're going to get to the concept of spells. This is the teaser for that. I'm always teasing.
Yes.
When you say something that is not your own thought, you're casting a spell on yourself. You are borrowing someone else's thought and you're literally enforcing it on yourself. So keep that in mind. And that's a little tidbit. So I don't think I really want to break down all of spellcasting right now. Real spellcasting. I don't mean fake spellcasting.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, just going into it a little bit more of a teaser. Abracadabra, I create as I speak.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it means. You have spelling, television, telepathic vision,
Mm-hmm.
that you are using a remote control to change the channel.
Yes.
Don't change the channel. Stay on twitch.tv/Yasukeh and youtube.com/c/Yasukeh to keep up with everything. It's been real. I am gonna pee real quick.
Okay.
So you keep the crowd invoked.
Invoked. Oh, that's a rough one. I'll try.
Maybe respond to some chat or something.
If you have questions for Starrman, ask them now. Because when he gets back, I'm not answering any more questions. That's how that works. Coveting is the desire to possess something that belongs to someone else, while envy is a resentful feeling that arises when another person has something you want, often accompanied by desire. So I'll correct this a tiny bit. So yes. How's it going, Starrman? It's going fantastic. I'm having a wonderful day. It's really, I don't really have a lot of bad days, so I'm just built different like that. But today was especially good. Work went really well, and super happy with everything that got done. And weather's beautiful for October, so yeah, just fantastic. I was gonna correct the coveting thing, and then I remembered the wording is actually correct there. But there's an interesting dialogue between jealousy and covetousness. So jealousy being more of a desire for what is your own, what you're owed, versus coveting is explicitly someone else's. So I was just wrong in the head there. Go ride on your motorcycle recently. No, I'm an all-weather rider, but I just winterized my motorcycle. So I was tempted to de-winterize it and ride it this morning because the weather was so good. But no, I haven't been riding it for a couple months actually. Sucks. Understandable. So yeah. What? No, I am not riding my motorcycle recently. I think in general, motorcycles are a super awesome way to get around. And I'm kind of one of those guys that really enjoys more adrenaline focused activities. So for me, it makes sense. But pricing out motorcycles as like an economy thing almost never works out. Every time I do the math on that, I'm not saving money by owning a motorcycle because I still have to own a car. So if you could get away without owning a car, I think it makes a lot more sense.
But
Lost
see,
battery bolt.
But see, the problem with that, problem with having a motorcycle is that it just makes you a single loser because you innately cannot actually interact with other people. The same thing that you were saying earlier is just, I mean, essentially the choices that you make define the kind of lifestyle that you are capable of having. If you have a motorcycle, then you're never going to be able to go to the function and then go get some burgers with like 3, 4 other people afterwards, which is something that is a very valuable tool that you can have to sort of bond after an event. And if you don't have access to that, then you're never going to be able to do that kind of thing.
That's a really good point. Didn't even think about that, except we talked about it earlier. I didn't think about it in this context, but you're totally right because as a single guy, when I was single and I was riding a motorcycle, it was super limiting in how I could interact with people because you go somewhere and then you can't just take people with you. You're always relying on someone else offering you a ride, and then you have to leave your motorcycle and get brought back to it, which kind of kills the vibe of riding a motorcycle. Kind of the whole point is to be able to do whatever you want. So like the only time where it really felt good was like going to a festival, going down to something where I'm not going to try to interact with people. I'm just watching the sights. That makes a little sense. But it does quite literally make it impossible for you to get a girlfriend. This is why pickup trucks come with the girlfriend installed in the front seat, and motorcycles come with a tiny rear seat because they're like, you're not riding with it. They know. Yeah. They know. You're just not equipped for that. So you have to get the girlfriend first and then buy a motorcycle.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, ooh, he rides a motorcycle. I'm not gonna go for him. I can't ride on that thing.
Yeah, exactly. I'm never gonna be able to get on there.
Sorry about that. It is okay, Mister. Okay, I have access now.
You have access?
I have access now.
Oh, that's great. I live in a rural town. I'm not very tech savvy.
Uh, that's a good point that I was going to go into earlier. Is that it's kind of in that rural city divide, where when you live in a city, you essentially have infinity people that you have to potentially commingle with.
Hmm.
There's infinite amount of people that are 30 minutes away. Uh, in many cases, millions of people 30 minutes
Yes.
away that you can go to in Phoenix, where I'm from, as an example. So if you have a minor grievance with the group, or you don't really like what's going on, instead of actually trying to fix what's going on or try to mold things into being more amicable, you can simply choose to just get rid of it and then go to a completely new community that has none of the reputational baggage that you had from the last group. So in one sense, it's it's easier to sort of infiltrate your way into a group without all of the additional baggage and all of that kind of stuff. But then the problem is that there's not as much vetting,
Hmm.
because if there is no reputation, then you don't actually know everything about this kind of person that you've sort of been with. But if you have four, five, six different people who have known this guy for over a decade, then you have a very strong idea of who a certain person is before you even like begin to talk to them, essentially.
Yeah, just anecdotally, I know some people who live in the big old city, and those people have these friend groups. And when I go and visit them, I'm kind of aware of the friends groups. And there's certain people who are mainstays in those groups, have been around for a couple decades. And then there's other people. There's always new people in these particular friend groups, and it kind of centers around a couple different families. And so when I go there, sometimes I'm meeting new people, and sometimes I ask, where's such and such, and oh, they just kind of moved on or whatever. And it's interesting because in that situation, you can see the people that are respected. But in a large group like that, we're talking a rotating circle of maybe 30 to 50 people, kind of, who are always getting together over weekends and stuff. You can kind of see, oh yeah, that person just actually wasn't who they said they were, and eventually left, not because they were chased out, but because they kind of realized, oh, I'm getting this reputation for this thing that I actually don't want, so then I have to go to a new group.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes it very difficult for young men to find wives,
Mm-hmm.
because what's happening is newcomers are always kind of foreshadowed by the previous newcomer. When you're a newcomer into a group like that, everyone is going to say in their own mind, even if it's not conscious, this guy could be just like the last newcomer,
Mm-hmm.
who was also just not a great guy, or the newcomer before that, who was not a great guy.
Or looked to be a good guy, but then deceived us.
Yes.
So even if this guy shows himself to be a good guy at first, I could be getting deceived right now.
So it just makes it so much harder for guys to find spouses, and for women also, because they can't delineate. There's so much interchange, so many different things going on. It's so difficult to tell who's a good guy and who's not a good guy,
Mm-hmm.
compared to, um, you know, the rural areas where I'm from. It's like we know everybody. They've been here for decades, and even if they're a bad guy, colloquially speaking, they don't fit in with the group or whatever, they're still your neighbor, and you still have to interact with them, and you still know everything about them, which is actually still better than the newcomer that you don't know anything about. And so when you're trying to find a spouse, it's super difficult in these friend groups to be like, oh, here's a guy, oh, there's a guy, or here's a girl and there's a girl. You just don't know anything about each other. And it's why a lot of these just don't kick off. This is why so many people meet over the internet, because what's the advantage of meeting via a friend group? There isn't one,
Mm-hmm.
because I can meet a perfect stranger on the internet, and I can meet a lot more perfect strangers on the internet than I could, in a friend group.
Yeah, because you don't actually get the benefits that friend groups actually naturally should convey. So in that sense, what even really is the difference between that and online dating?
Yeah.
And this is a thing in general, is that so much media will glorify the idea of being the loser nerd or the person who got bullied, creating and then going to a new town, and they're going to build a new life, and then
Yeah.
everything is going to be better. And that's a common trope that is played, and they're still a loser nerd, but they somehow get the girl or something.
Yeah. That's really, really, it's really difficult. We're going to go over this again and again. And this is, media is programming you to expect these certain things when you do certain things. and it's almost always wrong. If you're going to a new town to get away from whatever happened at your old town or something like that, you can't expect necessarily to just be welcomed. And I know tons of people who have done this. They leave their hometown thinking, "Oh, I'm going to find somewhere better," and it takes them years, maybe 7, 8, 9 years, to really find a group of people and kind of be accepted. Because all of the best groups do social screening.
Mhm.
They don't necessarily have an open invite. I mean, you're familiar with this in the groups that I am in. Very much closed off. We're not necessarily like, oh, let's find new people to do events with or to do things with. The people we're looking for are going to geographically be close to us. They're people that are going to naturally be in our sphere. And there's people in, my current socialization circle that have been there near me for 5, 6, 7 years before there's ever an interaction.
Mhm.
And that's not a bad thing. It's that you have to guard your social circles fairly closely, not because, oh, someone's going to come in and ruin everything, but because the pass through of individuals can get really grating on the mainstays of the group. And then you start to have this kind of deteriorating, frustrating kind of aspect to the whole thing.
Exactly. Not to go into a current thing, but it's a perfect example.
I don't know what the current thing is. Sorry.
Yeah. don't know. Don't know what the current thing is.
I'm a working man. I don't know what the current thing.
You got the group chat. You got the homies.
Okay.
You and the homies are saying some edgy things, right?
Okay.
And then you invite somebody into the group chat, into the circle, who's not quite a homie.
Oh no.
You invite them early, and then they show the entire world all the things that you and your homies have been talking about in private, and then they publicize everything. So now all of a sudden, because you did not guard your inner circle with your life, all of a sudden, everybody knows every single thing that you spent so much effort making sure that was private. All of a sudden, because you didn't guard your circle, now all of a sudden everything is public.
And that can make everyone just dislike each other inside the circle. Even though that one person, if there's a snake, shall we say, and he gets outed as a snake, everyone still has that kind of phantom pain of like, oh, that guy was like, we thought he was a friend of ours.
Mm-hmm.
There was somewhere I was going to go directly with this, and now it's slipping my mind. I'm pulling a Yasukeh.
Yeah, me editing the VOD. I was editing episode 4 today, and it was legitimately 4 minutes. There was a point that I wanted to make, and I just froze like that for 4 minutes, trying to remember what the point was, just thinking, oh, hey, I'll just edit this in post. And then I'm just sitting there for 4 minutes, and then I don't even find the point that I wanted to. It's very frustrating. Which, I mean, just for me, just also goes into not being as content lubricated and not being as used to making content as I have been in the past. And also generally talking and formulating my thoughts in a more structured way. Also, with just being so incredibly sick, so many other things, just kind of so many other aspects of self improvement that I've had went down further in the same way that my cardio, not great right now. A lot of other physical aspects got a lot better after sickness, but cardio lagged behind quite a bit. In that same way, my ability to not be a bumbling retard is much lower than it was before. Editing podcasts, it's been real. Just noticing how many times I say like um I'm being much more deliberate now, and I've been succeeding so far in this because all of the episodes that have been recorded so far were recorded before the first episode was edited. So now that I'm getting rid of that in the future, I won't have to do a billion jump cuts, which will be very valuable.
Yeah, jump cuts are always a little weird. I remember my point now.
Yes.
Which was simply a practical application of gossip. Everyone wants to talk about gossip, and everyone has their own ideas of like what's okay to talk about, what's not okay to talk about. And just something that I've always thought and always operated under, and everyone that I talk to that tells me about different situations, I always give them this piece of advice, which is if someone had meant for you to hear what they said about you, they would have said it to you.
Mhm.
So when you hear someone say, "Oh, I was in a group chat with these people and they were talking about you," if they had meant to say it to you, they would have. And this is going to sound weird, but it's not fair to them that their jokes that they're making about you are affecting your whole life because they didn't mean to hurt you.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, they would have said it to your face. People make jokes about other people all of the time. And there are very few people that can have true, honest discussion. Um, every joke that I have for Yasuke and about Yasuke, I can just tell it to him.
Mhm.
He can handle that because we have that kind of relationship. And there's other people that I just don't have anything bad to say about them at all, like no jokes to be made. Not really bad to say, but anything can be turned into a joke, especially with Western minds. We
Mhm.
just go with these jokes. And so anything from someone's hair, how they dressed, or the shoes they were wearing, so easy to just make jokes about the people when they're not there. And you should understand that if people are making jokes about you when you're not there, they didn't mean for that to get to you. Was
Mhm.
it maybe wrong of them to even think those jokes? Maybe. But the point is getting bent out of shape because someone's like leaking the group chat to you and it's all these, things they're saying that are making fun of you. You should not let that affect you.
Mhm.
And you shouldn't take that to heart that these people just hate you or something. And I see a ton of really smart people fall for this more than um, like more medium to low intelligence people. For me, it's super easy. I always attribute this to being kind of like a just one standard deviation above average, which is basically just average anyway. In smarts, it's so easy for me to be like, oh, they're making jokes about me. They love me.
Mhm.
Whereas
Yeah.
like really smart people, they can't do that. They're like, oh, they're making jokes about me. They must hate me, and they
Yeah,
fall for
yeah.
that trap all the time.
Yeah, because, uh, somebody who's making that exact same joke about you would maybe be perfectly happy to bring up that same point of grievance, but they would bring it up in a much more controlled fashion in a completely different way. And this is just their sort of offhand, off color way of saying that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas they might have, a frustration with a particular behavior that you have or a way of going about things, but also understanding that it wouldn't be the best thing for that person to hear that thing at that time. If somebody is very entrenched with losing weight at the time and they're struggling with the ideas of cutting and the lack of energy that they're having while doing a whole bunch of work, they're having all of these other different struggles that they're working through. And then they hear something about, oh, their personality or their irritability or something. It is something that, everybody else in the group can understand that, like, oh, he has kind of a short temper right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that wouldn't be the best thing for that person to hear at the time because they're already struggling so much with losing weight to begin with that they don't want to think about, oh, losing weight plus, oh, everybody thinks I'm an asshole right now. So therefore, like, I'm just going to have even more stress and have even more things that are going on and just causing more problems for absolutely no reason. When sometimes the group just needs to talk about, like, oh, hey, it's been kind of annoying dealing with this person because I sometimes have to walk on eggshells a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we oftentimes will make memes about this in the type of group chats that exist these days. A lot of times, like, oh, X person, when you mention, that they left a spoon in the sink, and then it's just like a gif of some dude, raging out, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, well, maybe he's having difficulty right now, but maybe he wouldn't respond to that very well,
Mhm.
and so you intentionally maybe don't send that to him, even though it's realistically kind of harmless.
Mhm.
It's a realistic understanding of the situation. Of course, the person we're talking about is Ignatius Igor.
Ah,
Uh, we've been talking about him the whole episode.
yes.
Yeah.
The
Uh,
entire episode has been about Ignatius Igor,
yeah.
who we are name dropping by name.
Several times just to make sure he gets it.
Yes.
We have to walk around eggshells on you or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, there have been a couple chats by VIPs, parentheses, Porkins. These two have obviously never ventured more than 5 miles from where they are born. I wish.
That is, I wish. Yeah, that would be excellent. Then I would never have had to deal with Porkins.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Uh, yeah, good point. It's hard to find people that you relate compatible with. There's always layers to that, which is ultimately also having difficulties finding people, which is the way of the city scattergun approach of just trying to put everything at the wall and kind of see what sticks.
Yeah.
This is where there is unique difficulties because this isn't a problem that people should have ever had. You should have the ideal relationship is one where you're growing up with people and then you're molding together so that you guys are becoming much more alike and have a similar common shared cultural background and heritage so that you guys have ways and ways to relate to each other in bonds that could never actually be replicated anywhere else. And because we don't have that, then we're in a unique situation where we have to find these things completely on our own.
I think one of the kind of casualties of this is that you never get to see other people really grow. If people are coming into your circle and leaving within 2 years, moving countless miles away, you never get to see them actually go through growth. Whereas when you grow up with somebody, you see this with siblings, they understand that person and they've seen them grow. So they're going to have maybe more compassion, but also they're more encouraged because they know, oh, people can change. And even as people go through adolescence, people get old enough and they get married. I know I have some friends that I went to school with. I didn't go to an actual school, by the way, trade school. Just want to be clear. When we were in school together, it was like, this guy's kind of out there. I don't know how this guy's going to find a wife, right? Gets married at 19 and like just overnight changes into one of the most solid guys of all time. It's like, whoa, if I met this guy now, I would never know he was capable of being such kind of a frolicky young man, so to speak. But he's like so serious now. He's so committed to providing for his family and he's so committed to this woman and now his kids and stuff. It's like, I got to see that because I knew him when he was, young. And then you get to see them go through a change. Whereas we tend to, in our society, just be like, oh, people how they are. A, because they're encouraged. If you don't fit here, just go find another group where you do fit in. So there's no community kind of honing. But then also you're never with people long enough to know what they were like when they were 14 and how they've grown since they were 14. Yeah. More encouraging.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're getting a little obsessive over Sonic fan art. Instead of having, the community beating that out of you behind the shed, you just have, just find a group of like-minded people and then get into more and more degenerate stuff.
Yeah, there's no kind of correction of that kind of mental illness that would really be helpful.
Yeah, which is the problem of not being held accountable. It's in the same concept of, as a young guy, I don't think that any young guy should have their own room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's so like having just honesty in that time to where why would you put somebody in a situation to where they could be potentially doing bad things?
Yeah.
And that you're relying on any system that relies on willpower is a failed system to begin with.
Yeah.
Is that you don't ever want to put people in situations to where their natural inclination is to make mistakes. So in that sense, if you have it to where, there's a more communal living situation to where, there's multiple siblings in the same room, like, why do you even need your own room to begin with? Like, what are you going to benefit from that privacy? In the same way of, sleepovers. Like, why do you, as, hormonally active children, why would you ever want to have alone time isolated away from adults at night? What good could possibly come out of that situation?
Literally nothing. There's not a single thing that could be gained from having less supervision when you're at the tender ages. There's just no reason for that. And the things that would be beneficial to have less supervision over are more in the vein of what we talked about before, which is kind of going and conquering and claiming your own space. Not the same as having your own room, by the way. But I mean, going outside and finding a space where you can be like, oh, like this is my space, even if it's not actually yours, kind of taking responsibility or claiming it. And this is something that can happen like in the inner city. There's lots of different areas, hangouts, kind of haunts, or like even convenience stores where it's like, oh, yeah, this is like my convenience store, my parking lot, so to speak. And the same thing can happen in the rural parts of America. You can go out in the woods and like, oh, this is my little spot. I'm gonna build my little fort here or whatever.
Mhm.
Those things are super useful, and those are things where the privacy that you have there is not the same as the privacy in your own room, so to speak. But that is where less supervision can be helpful because you're out there kind of on your own doing it, and you kind of learn as you go. But with a sleepover thing, it's like let's just I'm saying with lock-ins at schools and stuff. Let's just put children in like the most vulnerable situation where it only takes one rotten egg, so to speak. I'm using air quotes too much, but it's just people always say this stuff like, "Oh, it's just one rotten egg." Well, maybe it's not a rotten egg. Maybe they're just kids, and they're
Yeah,
naturally
yeah.
prone to the same, vices that everyone is prone to.
Mhm,
And now you're giving that kid absolute power or absolute agency in this other group of kids. Where's the value in this?
mhm. Yeah, because so many kids would never be the troublemakers, the rabble rousers, or whatever the air quotes term you used was. They would never actually be that in a situation to where they were just given, proper supervision where needed, and it's not a bunch of, uh, like, uh, theater kids sleeping overnight in the cafeteria where there's one adult there
Yeah.
and 100 kids and everybody's just sleeping together on a mat.
Yeah, so I guess we shouldn't use the term rotten egg or rabble rouser. Just use theater kid from now on because they're just the worst, the
Yes.
most likely to cause problems. Theater kids are just don't like them. So the thing is, though, when you're in that situation where you're talking about supervision, what's good, what's bad supervision, almost always we find that supervision is strictly beneficial, and instinctually we all kind of know this because one of the big complaints about schools is the teacher to student ratio.
Hmm.
Why would that be such a big thing if kids developed really well when unsupervised?
Hmm.
And you know, I'm against public schools in general, but we do look at the results and we can go, actually, more supervision yields better results in terms of education and in terms of, conformity, even, which
Hmm.
conformity is good or bad. We're talking about communities helping conform. So maybe don't send your kids to an indoctrination center. But all the same, if you have a community of adults who are all people that share your kind of views, that's like a 30 to 1, where you have 30 teachers and like one kid. That's fantastic. That's the best
Hmm.
ratio you could possibly hope for. It literally reversed of the public school where you have 30 kids and one teacher who you may not even agree with on like 90% of things.
Hmm.
So having your kids supervised by your community is so much more. And I don't mean like sending them over for sleepovers, but I mean rather if you're doing a community event, like we use the term going to the function. This applies to anything. Going to the function and all the adults are there and then all of the kids are there and they're all being watched. There's just so much less that things can get up to. And everyone there who's a parent has an intrinsic desire to see the children doing productive, good things, not bad things. So they're all trustworthy to an extent, certainly to the extent where you might turn your back for a few moments while the
Hmm.
kids are like playing tug of war or something.
Yeah, yeah, like the just goes back in how much media corrupts things to where it's always about having those areas of isolation, and these are where kids get their true freedom in a way that is so
Yeah.
important. And then it's even still talked about in all of the ways that this is a negative in totality, but is often like glorified as a good thing. Like, oh, losing her prom dress on prom
Yeah.
night. And prom would be a great example to where there's, maybe 10 teachers for, you know, 300-400 students. And, how there's no way to supervise in that idea how many people are actually staying there or some people going out somewhere else to do
Yeah.
something that is completely beyond
Um,
the pale.
So I'm gonna give some anecdotal stuff just about prom, but keep in mind what we have said before: everything's fake. So don't take it too seriously. And I know we don't do gore, but these stories are a little nasty. But just remember, it's fake. But it goes into what they want you kind of to think. So there's a lot of stories of young girls going to prom, literally having babies in the bathroom, and then just leaving the babies there and going back to prom, giving birth unassisted in a bathroom at a school while there are teachers present. Um, and obviously these are horrible because it's fatal for the baby typically. Again, these stories are all fake.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is that can you believe that? Like, if that is the truth you're ascribing to, anything could happen at prom. If that can happen at prom, there's just no limit to what could happen at prom. And obviously that's not even, I mean, that's the worst stories because it ends in fatalities, but there's, lots of other nasty, horrible things that happen at prom and teachers just have no idea it's going on. So why would you send your kid to that? Well, because there's a cultural expectation that if they don't go to prom, they won't develop right.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Yeah, losing out on those experiences, which is why it's just like, for me, everybody that I get the most along with are either people that have been homeschooled or people that dropped out for one reason or another, some kind of delinquency. And if anything, that just makes them, more level-headed people. Like they're more normal in the correct ways as opposed to normal regression to the deviation of the mean.
I remember we were talking a little bit just about, kind of in the abstract, evaluating women for marriage. And we were talking about, what if she is a public school girl? Like, what does that mean? How does that change the questions? One of the things you brought up was like, well, what's her delinquency record? Like, if she's not delinquent, not for me.
Yeah. See, that's also kind of a... I'm just thinking about that question right now because on one hand, it's, there's all of the benefits of not going to public school, but then there's also the question of, okay, this was a person who was accepting on some level of the authority, or their family made them sort of submit to this authority and then they refused to submit to that authority. So is it just them, having a principled objection to going to school, or is it just that they hate authority?
Yeah, there's always two ways to spin that one. I think it's a lot easier when you are looking at the structure of how things are supposed to be and how authority structures work in families. It is a lot easier to respect a guy who is rejecting authority than it is a woman who's rejecting authority. I'm gonna get so much hate for that probably, but that's just the fact of the matter. Like, a woman who's saying, no, I don't want any authority, is very dangerous compared to a guy who's like, no, I don't want any authority. And that's not that he's not dangerous. It's just that he could probably be won over. You can probably figure out some authority, because I think authority structures are super viable, super helpful. I'm an authoritarian when it comes to community, not when it comes to government. And so understanding that there has to be some sort of societal norms that are ascribed to, but there's always the chance that someone's just like, every time I go to school, I get bullied or things are bad, so I'm just not going to school. And it's like, good. Yeah. You shouldn't necessarily just keep going places where things are terrible. And so many stories from people who will go to public school, that's all it was, is it's a place I had to go every day where bad things happen and zero learning.
Yeah, this is just reminding me of one trope that I was thinking about, is that almost every piece of media, you have, super children, right? Like the Incredibles or Dragon Ball Z or something like this, to where, these children have so many reasons to not be in traditional schooling. And it's dangerous for both them and the people around them for them to be in traditional schooling. But, you still got to go. You still got to do these things because it's so important to be part of the system. Whereas logically, if I had super kids, why would I ever have them, risk having to, manage their powers or something like that?
Yeah.
When I could just homeschool them. Like that would be the first most obvious thing, even if I'm not a homeschooling parent, to just, get these kids out of this system to where they're constantly being influenced and influencing other random people that are just completely uncontrollable to you.
And antagonized.
Mhm.
Yeah, the idea that, oh, I'm so worried like my kid's gonna hurt somebody. A, obviously in the super kid example, that's like a viable concern, but it is a subversion in that the real concern is your kids are being actively damaged by other kids all the time.
Mhm.
One of the things that the story was recounted to me about church nursery. All these kids are in this church nursery at this particular church, and the mom is like, why would I put my kids in the nursery? Like, well, so they're not interrupting the service. She's like, okay, but there's 10 other kids in there that I don't know, and there's one adult who's like supposed to be managing this whole thing, and these are kids between the ages of like 2 and 5. It's like, if one of these kids just decides they're gonna bite my kid,
Mhm.
that could be literally a lifelong disfiguring like injury,
Mhm.
and I have zero control over that.
Kids have very strong bites.
Yes.
I have a very strong bite as a kid.
How do you know that?
I might have been one of the kids in these events.
um but yeah, like if that is your level too, it's kind of a principle thing, right? Because if that's your level of control, you don't want to give up. Like, I don't want to leave my kid alone for 30-40 minutes with other kids I don't know because they might do something horrible to them. Why would you send your kid for 8 hours
Mhm.
with a worse ratio of supervision to children, and you have no idea what's happening? And
Yeah,
the only time they get sent home is if they do something bad.
yeah. There's also kind of that anarcho tyranny aspect to it, to where, you know, the common quote. This is one of those quotes that's just kind of been done to death in modern times, but it's still actually just relevant and useful. It's, for the thief to have a knife is simply part of his culture. It's simply expected of him. But for you to have a knife, that's terrorism.
Yeah.
So in that sense, like I did experience that in school. Like, I mean, that was the reason. It was one of the reasons for me getting into martial arts. Is, I grew up being a minority in the schools that I was in, and there was a time where, just completely out of the blue, one kid holding my hands behind my back and the other punching me in the stomach, and I'm not really in a position where I'm capable of fighting back. I don't fight back whatsoever because I'm also just not capable,
Yeah,
and I get punished for a week because of that.
that
Uh,
checks out.
yeah, and so in that sense, it's completely equal from the people that are actually causing the issues and uh like should have like real repercussions, as in essentially just not being in school,
Yeah.
uh versus me, the helpless victim at the time, getting the exact same punishment.
This is just like Ipo or something.
Yeah, just like Evo, just like Evo.
Yeah.
So in this sense, it's the school system is not just logistically in a situation that will make these things happen from lack of supervision relative to the amount of children that are there, but it's something that's effectively encouraged through not actually having the proper ability to uh, punish the troublemakers.
Yeah. And so this is another one of those, excuse me, systematic rejections, rejecting the education system, that can be kind of dangerous to people who aren't prepared for it. Because if you reject the education system, it's not so much that now you have to educate your kids yourself. Because the first thing you learn when you're homeschooling is that actually kids learn things.
Mm-hmm.
They just learn to read on their own. They learn to do math.
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced this. I've taught my children absolutely zero math, and they can already do a lot of counting without any teaching, just because I'm with them and they experience me counting and they go, oh, that's how counting works.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much of this that they just pick up by osmosis, and they learn so much that way. So what you find is not that, oh, I have to replace school with some other function of learning. What you find is, oh, everyone around me views me as a threat to their systemic way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have to find another way to live because I can't be involved with these people. And the common trope is like, oh, well, I'll just get my children in sports and then other people will accept me. And that does work a lot, but it comes with its own downsides.
This is also why it's completely different for family, but in the concept of you can't be halfway in, halfway out with the kind of relationships that you have with people. Because if you do decide that public schooling isn't the best thing and I'm not going to put my kids through that, then there are going to be people who are essentially taking that like a snake, like a hyena of just rapidly attacking you
Mm-hmm.
to the ultimate degree. And it's the question of uh, unless that's your family, you don't have any reason to justify actually keeping that relationship. So you kind of have to be sort of fully on board or fully not on board, which is also in the point of for a lot of people that would be getting into something like this, it can feel kind of very isolating because nobody around them is doing this thing and they're considering doing this thing and they don't have any support group that is like them. And then when they do the thing, they're getting ostracized by all of their like former peers and stuff. So one, it's about finding people that actually align with the values of what you're trying to do, and then not interacting with non-family members who are actively going to try to tear you down. And to, in the same way that you wouldn't want to have the person who gets super offended in the group chat, you wouldn't want to have the person who would potentially call, CPS on you to your inner circle when you are like, hey, yeah, public schooling, not the best.
Yeah, and again, the drive to replace that with something else can leave you in a really tough spot. I have known quite a few people who, um, not super close people to me, but kind of ancillary to my spheres, who are like, "Yeah, I'll do this public or the homeschooling thing," and they start it, and 5, 6 years in, they themselves as the parents even kind of have this feeling of like a lack of any kind of progression because it's so hard baked into them. They're like, oh well, what grade is my kid in? I have to have a graduation ceremony and all this stuff. It is very much a cultural rite of passage to do all these things. When my one of my family members was calling dances, uh, one time they were contracted to go out to the homeschool group in the city near me and call a dance out there. And so I went also because it's fun. And I'm out there watching this, and it's like, oh, this is their prom. But it has almost none of the similarities to an actual prom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, oh, yeah, our kids need this. And it was so eye opening to me that this is the thing they go, of all the aspects of public school, this is the one we need in our homeschool group.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have to have the prom. And it just kind of crystallized in my mind. I mean, this is almost 10 years ago now. Like, with these people, the parents are hung up on they need the school system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even about the education or the accolades or academia. It's literally about their visualization of how childhood should progress, which the reality is childhood's myth doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Children are able to do so many things from they're very young. And there's an element of agency that goes along with understanding. And when you recognize that, then you can recognize when your children are ready to do things instead of waiting until the school system tells you, okay, your kids can do this now. Okay, they can do that now. But rather being in touch with your children, you can understand, oh, they're able to do this thing. They need direction, they need correction, but they have the ability to understand the responsibility. Well, then they can do it.
Yeah, this is just always my biggest frustration as a former child is where I would feel like I could never progress at the rate or understand things at the rate that I would have wanted to. And just felt like I was constantly being sort of bogged down to where I want to do things at a certain pace. Like I effectively just dropped out at a certain point because I was like lied to about how systems would work in terms of, oh, you can just do things at your own pace. And I took that to mean that if I wanted to, graduate a year later when I was, 14, then I could have. Uh, and that would have been something that was my idea, but it was just like, oh no, you can do the specific classwork that you're given, at this time or at that time, but you can't go further than like the
Ah,
pace that we've given you. And so in that sense, it's just very limiting and just completely like stifles the idea, which is why it's just, you know, I, despite, being a dirty public schooler and despite having actually, graduated, just did as much to just get as away from that as much as possible, you know, getting into all the AP classes because I'm just like, the best tester or whatever. Um, Understanding it like this is not the kind of thing that would be good for me. And so just doing as little as possible, showing up, 17% of the time for my math class, doing as getting as far away from the system. Whereas I didn't have as much of a crystallization to see that, like, oh, this wasn't really needed at all. Whereas, I started a landscaping business when I was like 9 or 10.
so based.
Made like $300 each between us, which is like real money when you're that age.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And in that, there's so many jobs that I could have easily done at 10 years old, at 11 years old, that, would be a real proper entry level job that you'd have as, a 19, 20-year old. And
Hmm.
there's no reason why I couldn't have started earlier. Uh, there's always, the whole learning on the job. You learn more things on the
Yeah.
job. It would have been so much more beneficial for me to be able to do that. But, oh no, child labor laws, just making it to where, oh, I can't actually, do the thing that would both be beneficial for me and beneficial for other people because, you know, there are certain tasks in jobs where you might want to hire somebody, but, you can't hire them
Yeah.
for, a particular rate. But I would have been fine working for, $5 an hour at a lot of times. So that would not have been an issue for me.
Yeah, I'm similar in that way. So I was homeschooled, but I never liked doing the schooling. Was not a big fan of it, and so my parents made me deal. They were kind of like, "Well, if you get a job, you don't have to do schooling."
Hmm.
And so when I was 13, I managed to get a job in the trades, working under the table. So basically, just full time under the table.
Hmm.
And so that was super super helpful for me. And what I found interesting, especially later on, is that when doing this work, I'm learning so much, especially about math, because the guys I was working for were really great. And the main guy I worked for, the reason he was like totally fine with hiring me at 13 is because when he was 11 years old, and he's a boomer. When he was 11 years old, he was a manager at an A&W.
Mm.
He literally
Yeah.
closed and took money to the bank.
Hmm.
Like every night, just bags of money took him to the bank and closed the shop up. Like when he was 11 years old, that was his first job, and he started on the railroad when he was 16. So
Hmm.
his mind is like, yeah, you're 13. You should have been working a couple of years already.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like,
Don't already have a Weiss
yeah,
house,
yeah, it's
a
crazy.
car.
So like for that, they respected me. They were like, this is a guy. This is like a full grown man. Is how they treated me. He just doesn't know very much.
Hmm.
Very very kind and hard sometimes, which was also helpful. But when I got to like 16, 17, I actually had this desire and hunger to learn the things that I didn't like when I was 13.
Hmm.
Um, and because I was making, decent money, I could afford to do whatever I wanted for myself. And so like I went back and the whole time I was taking state standardized testing because that's required,
Hmm.
and just not studying and passing every single one. Like
Hmm.
not even hard for those grades. And then just went back and restudied everything I had missed when I was 16. And then when I was 19, just like I was doing a lot of college level stuff. And that was super, super insightful for me. I started just by buying textbooks because you can just buy college textbooks, it turns out.
Yeah.
You don't need to go to college for that.
Hmm.
And so just buying the textbooks and being interested in that, and super, super enlightening to the mind that you can just buy like 15 set textbooks on a subject. And then there are correspondence classes, of course, and things like that. But it's just like there is so much out there that you can learn if you want to. But when I was 13, I didn't want to. And then when I was 16, I had a hunger. And guess what? I just went and did it on my own.
Hmm.
So this idea that, oh, you have to follow a structure program or whatever is so, so ridiculous. And then, of course, around here where I'm at, the trades are the primary industry. So the fact that I started when I was 13 gave me a huge jump start to the point where I'm like 24 and I can, do just about anything.
Mhm.
And I'm viable for every company. It's like, wow, what a huge offer. I can get high paying jobs in the trades, which a lot of the guys that are getting their jobs now are college graduates who know nothing. They're as useful as I was when I was 13. It's like,
Yes.
what a jump start. What a way to do it. And there was just no downsides. I can't think of a
Yeah.
single downside.
Yeah, there's just absolutely zero downsides.
Plus, getting money.
Yeah, which is so nice and so valuable. And
Yeah.
the thing you were talking about building your own space, building a space that you have conquered yourself,
Yeah.
that is so important. And that is effectively what a job can be, is this time and this place that it's like, oh, I am doing something, I am creating something, I am building value that is outside of my father's roof.
Yeah.
And when you actually are doing that, then you are uh, essentially doing all of the things to become a man, like way earlier than you need to, when the natural inclination of the modern world today is to infantilize people and keep them children as long as possible. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
people that are 25 who have genuinely never done an adult thing in their life.
Yeah.
Whereas you could be half the age and already start being an adult.
Yeah,
No reason not
there's
to.
just no reason. And you can do adult things like you're talking about. There's several jobs where as like a 13, 14, 15-year-old, you can be working these entry-level jobs and your physicality isn't necessarily an issue. For me in the trades, I was picked on and heckled quite a bit for being small, which I only really see as a good thing because they weren't mean-spirited about it. It's just that, 14-year-old can't lift the same weight as a 35-year-old man.
Mhm.
You should want to be this strong. You
Yeah,
should
yeah.
want to be like this, showing me that even if I can comprehend and do things, I'm not strong enough. I need to get stronger. Whereas there's no real push or need for that. Like in public school, you can get on the wrestling team and they have the same thing, right? Which is you're not strong enough. You're not big enough. Same with football. You get into these sports and you'll have a coach that will literally coach you. But in the trades, everyone's your coach.
Mhm.
Everyone's telling you, don't lift like that. Now lift like this. Hey, load this way, load that way. Hey, you can't do that. Here's a clever way to beat the fact that you're too weak yet. And it also is just inspiring because there's all these men around you who are lifting these heavy things. And you're just like, you get a real appreciation for being strong. And it's a desire. You want to lift heavy things too.
Yeah, which is the whole point of why people glorify the idea of prom, glorify the idea of getting on the football team, all of these things, because there is that sort of value in it. Whereas, if anything, this is the kind of point of if there wasn't enough value added for a certain thing that is poisonous, then you would never uptake it to begin with.
Yeah.
So, yes, being on a team sport in high school would be of great benefit to you, but it's not the only place that you can get that sort of aspect of value. And it's sort of being the little crumb to give you to accept everything else that you have to go through of, oh, you can't be on the football team unless your grades are this high.
Right.
Or that, like, oh, you're missing too many days, like your attendance is a little bit low, like you're gonna have to ride the bench, and all of these things to where it's stick and carrot and stick situation, where the stick is just uh, made of fecal matter.
Yes.
Yeah, and the carrot is slightly rotten, but it's still kind of sweet.
I have to.
All right, we are both going to go. We'll be back in a second.
I can wait.
Okay, you are gonna look at chat.
Yeah. I got this. We're so synced.
Yes.
It's funny because in the recordings, obviously, it's very beneficial to go at the same time because then you just save so much time overall. Not in the same room. We're not sword fighting. That's not happening. Some professors are worth knowing, interacting with, learning with, especially if it's a field you also like and are interested in. I'm not saying you need to do degrees and master's degree necessarily. Yeah, no, this is true. I ended up joining. So I did some correspondence, attended stuff for the two fields that really interest me, which is theoretical astrophysics, and psychology. So I did a lot of study in those fields and like with classes, and there's some professors who are very helpful. Um, so and like I didn't get a degree. I just was going to school over time via the internet, right? Worked as a bagger at 14 by 15. I was a grocery clerk, moved pallets around off trucks. Tough work, and later than you two were talking about, but it was a major life lesson. I'm a journeyman trade, and those lessons are applied here tenfold. Yes, totally true. I mean, just having some responsibility. If your responsibility is make sure the groceries go in the bag, you start to get, it's almost like Tetris in the sense of like, oh, this has to go this way, this goes this way. There's a specific way of doing it. And the fact that you learn that system is so beneficial because then when you're doing trade works, it's like, oh, there is a specific system, and you already understand there's a specific system. You don't have to go through, oh, is there a system or not? Said this a while ago that when I was 13, I wanted to work, but my dad kind of scoffed at me. And yeah, I relate to what you said a lot because then when I was around 18, I started actually caring about education much more. Yeah, this kind of is something that just makes a lot of sense. The way men are when we're developing, especially at that tender age of 13, 14, and 15, it seems like so many men care more about proving that they can do the man thing than they do about learning a lot of like maths or any other skill set. Math was always not fun for me, so that's like the one I think of. But yeah, it seems like then once we get a little older and the brain is developing more, because men don't really stop developing till like 35. Like once you get more of that brain developed, it seems like there's a more desire, there's a thirst for that knowledge. All right, my turn.
Your turn, yes. Yeah, so a couple points that I was going to say to this idea is that this is also the way that kids should innately learn, physical traits and physical abilities, is that you don't want to have to be a theory cell at first and learn all of the esoteric ideas behind physical traits when you are 8 years old. You just do. The most important thing is to just do, and then you innately learn through the mistakes from the actual goal of doing it. What is up, Momente? And then later on, when you get older, that's when you have a little bit more of a developed understanding through just getting so many reps done that you start to have more interest in actually learning the theory behind the work that you're doing. Whereas you don't want to be an 8-year-old when they're doing physical activity, they're just going to fall a lot. And that's perfectly fine. You don't instruct every single little thing because they're just learning on their own. And that is the value. Doing great, a little hungry, eating a bite of a brisket taco. So, modern schooling. 30 minutes.
That's a big mouthful.
So the way that modern society operates right now is actually the exact opposite of what it should be, in that you should do first, ask questions later. Whereas now it's don't ask every question, but get the answers to every question first. And then maybe someday, 13 years down the line, you'll actually be able to do the first thing. Starrman from YouTube just commented. Real.
On that concept of just kind of how higher education works, people look at like getting a doctorate in philosophy. This is something that my mom was pretty good to harp on, is just that like if you get a doctorate in philosophy, you should know how to philosophize.
Mm-hmm.
But every single doctorate in philosophy is just like a sorting machine. Oh, you belong in this philosophy. You belong in that philosophy. You're this, you're that. Anyone can do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally like that should be a year one work of like figuring out what philosophies fit where. But if you have a doctorate in philosophy, you should be a philosopher. You
Mm-hmm.
should not be sorting people like, the Harry Potter wizard hat, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
should literally not be going, oh, that's blah, 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 blah. You should be philosophizing. Like, you should be inventing new philosophy.
Yeah, like that of being able to accurately categorize and sort things is the most fundamental basic for how you actually get into any idea, is that you just need to understand where something comes from. But that's the start. That shouldn't be the oh hey, look, I'm really smart. I know the thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
It's it should be an unsaid thing of, oh, I know what you're doing. Here's an additional thought, an additional layer of a different way of thinking about this problem that you have right now, or that this thought that you're trying to pose, and here is a unique addition that I'm giving, which is exactly what the entire purpose should be. And if you're only able to sort things, then what are you actually doing? There's no value in that.
Could you
Like
imagine?
an AI can do that.
Yeah. Imagine being a PhD mathematician and you're just like, oh, that equation, that looks like division. Oh,
Mhm.
that equation, that looks like addition.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you are supposed to be, doing PhD math things,
Mhm.
finding new ways to solve equations or new equations that are helpful in solving different concepts. Like, you should not be like, I recognize that.
Mhm.
Like, what's the point?
Yeah, yeah. Um, which no, yeah, just in complete agreement. It generally just is. Ultimately, it just comes down to doing
Yeah.
and not really feeling the anxiety behind trying. Like an example that I could give is that there are a lot of things with this recent foray back into content that I'm not doing efficiently. And there are a whole bunch of things that I know and I understand that I could be doing things in this way or that way differently, or these additional things that I could be doing. But if I get bogged down in that, then I wouldn't have been doing the podcast to begin with.
Yeah.
And so, in that sense, it's better to just start doing the thing and not feeling the anxiety of, oh, I'm going into a completely different form of content. These are all of the downsides with it. How do I deal with the downsides? Oh, the way to deal with the downsides is to just not do anything.
I think that's something that, again, is one of those things that plagues people who have above average IQ,
Hmm.
in the sense that if I'm not going to do it perfectly, might not as well not do it at all.
Hmm.
But that's such a almost like aspy or autist kind of way of doing things, when the reality is you should try and see what happens and then improve from there. There's kind of this concept somewhat in I'm sure someone's going to correct me on this because I'm not like 100% on it, but there's a concept in kind of Japanese culture where they don't do amateur performative. So if you're doing something like singing or playing violin, you're not amateur at it. You're either a professional or you're in school.
Hmm.
And it leads to them having more schools, but it also leads to them having kind of a way of modesty of like, oh yeah, I don't play violin, even though they play violin for like 10 or more plus years. Whereas here in the US, we have an entrepreneurial aspect. I'm going to start playing, like, oh, I've been playing for 2 weeks. I'll go play on the street corner, see if I can get some money.
Hmm.
Whereas, like, that to them, that would be like dishonoring. Like, well, you
Hmm.
don't have your master's yet in violin or whatever. You can't do that.
Hmm.
So that's kind of one of those cultural aspects that we have here. But it is helpful. You see the difference in general, Eastern cultures do not do as much entrepreneurial work. They don't go into the fields and make these fields larger. They instead study the material and get really, really good at the material.
Hmm.
This is why the best violinists in the world are, Asian,
Hmm.
Chinese, some Japanese violinists who are just phenomenal because they're just studying these things on a level that we as Westerners don't really appreciate or really understand.
It's
But
also why better at League.
yes,
Like, what is the value of entrepreneurship with getting better at League?
none.
Yeah.
There's none. That's why we have more high paid streamers here than they
Mm-hmm.
do there, because they don't value that. Whereas like a streamer here could be like, "Ooh, I'm doing crazy blah 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 strat," and
Mm-hmm.
all their friends are just like, "Ooh, that's so cool," and like you're in masters or whatever. So I guess hit the donate or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas over there, they're just gonna be like, "Yeah, but are you the best?
Mm-hmm.
Why do
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
care about you're doing this weird off meta thing?" But like, how many the greatest violins were made in Italy?
Mm-hmm.
All
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
How many great violinists are there in Italy? Well, not
It's,
really a thing.
too many naps.
Yeah, like there's nothing wrong. Violinists in Italy are fine, but there's a reason that the violin comes from that kind of spirit of entrepreneurship. They design it and they make it really, really well. Stradivarius, obviously, to this day, most sought after violins
Mm-hmm.
in the world. That's kind of crazy when you think about how, if there was a way to copy one, you think we would see that by now.
Yeah, yeah.
So just the two aspects there. If you're going to be the best in the field, you have to apply kind of an Eastern thought. But when it comes to how we view success here in America and in the Western world in general, you're more likely to succeed if you take more risks. You posted a graph depicting this. People who take more risks tend to have overall more positive results than people who take lower risks. This is not necessarily corresponding to the high risk, low risk paradigm,
Mm-hmm.
simply in the idea that if you take a risk, you're more likely to gain than if you don't take a risk.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because if you don't take a risk, you cannot gain,
Mm-hmm.
which is not the Wayne Gretzky quote. It's not Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, of just like, podcast could just meander and kill any idea of like me ever potentially doing any content whatsoever again.
Right.
But could also have a whole bunch of upside. And it also already has had a whole bunch of upside of just like the personal importance and the value of getting these things out, and even getting these things out to like specific people that I know, in that it doesn't matter if I get tens of thousands of people watching, if it's specific people watching, because also there is that value in that importance of community, which also goes into another point of maybe contention, maybe not contention, is that I think there's actually a lot of value in having an online presence, especially in contrast to trying to do things in the city. Is that if you're essentially broadcasting who you are, as long as you are authentic about your true self online, then you are naturally going to gravitate towards the kind of people that are like you, and people that are like you are going to find your stuff, and then you can actually develop real world connections, which is also the point, is that create an online presence, get these valuable connections online, and then turn them into offline connections.
Yeah.
And in that sense, there's also the point that having a consistent online presence also does give you some level of social proofing, in that, oh, this person is known, and this person has had a whole bunch of people analyze and dissect them forever. So if there was something that was super beyond the pale about them, then I would be able to find it out. Like if I typed in Yasukeh onto Twitter, then I would find something about oh, look at all these
$350 or something.
Yeah. Or if I YouTube, yeah, that's a good example. If I YouTube Nice, the first thing that pops up is that 600,000, like 500,000 viewed documentary that essentially I wrote, more or less, just like destroying his entire existence.
Yeah.
So in that sense, he can't ever use that as social proof. But that's also sort of a good thing for people that would otherwise be around him, is that they can look into him, look at, oh, he used to do content. Oh, looking at him doing content, oh, he's just a horrible person. So then now I actually have the ability to keep my distance. And that's something that everybody is afforded when you do put yourself out there whether it's a Substack, whether it's a Twitter account, whether it's a YouTube channel. You don't even have to be super, oh, I'm going to be a content creator. Simply just putting your ideas out there and interacting with other people can have just immense level of value in not only giving some level of social proof, but then also to sort of creating offline connections.
Yeah, I think as a blanket statement, I'm against that. But there's such an imperfect world we live in. I think our backgrounds dictate kind of a different philosophy. You have to, and I would say for you, it's good. I would also say for a lot of the guys that you have connected with, it's been really good. Obviously, if you weren't online, I would personally lose out on that friendship, the relationship we built. And likewise, there's a lot of guys I've met through you,
Mhm.
through the Oscord and things like that, where for them, I think it's excellent. And I agree that the vetting process in the modern age is really, really important. Better if you don't have to. But
Yes.
when you're in the city, I do agree it's so hard to prove to people this is who I've always been. But if you look up any Yasuke video, you're never going to find something that's not a Yasuke.
Mhm.
I have met a couple different streamers because, back when I was thought I wanted to be in that scene, went to different events. And I recall one particular streamer I met. He came off the elevator, and before there was a big crowd, I'd been tipped off he was going to be in this particular elevator by one of the other guys in my group. And we went over there and waited by the elevator because one of his people had said he'll meet people there. He's going to meet people there. He comes off the elevator and we're like, hey, how's it going? And he's like super genuine and just like down to earth or whatever. And you see, like, when he's in the elevator, he's him. And he comes out and like we're the first people, and he's kind of still him. And then like slowly over the course of 30 seconds, as a huge crowd of people grows around, it changes back to his streamer personality. And
Mhm.
I could tell right then, it's like, oh, okay, so this person is not who they are. In that case, they're actually a better person when they're not streaming.
Mhm.
They're like a much more enjoyable, reasonable individual just from that tiny little glimpse in. Um, and with you, obviously, this doesn't really count, but like I can vet you in the sense that like when I met you, it's like, well, this is exactly the same guy that I've been watching. Like he is exactly the guy on stream.
Mhm.
And that can be super helpful because then I know I can look at all your streams or all of your videos and like, oh, I'm going to get a genuine Yasuke. I'm not going to get some random person that I don't recognize. And any of your views or thoughts, I can also be like, yeah, this is something he believes. This is something he's in on. So it makes it much easier to vet in that regard.
Mhm.
So in terms of other people having online presence like Twitter or Instagram and other things like that, they can get thoughts out there. Yeah, can be helpful. It's also one of those things that you should be aware, like you said, it's always out there. So it has to keep you honest. Like
Mhm.
you got to be careful about that. It can backfire if you're not a good person. It's a quote of yours. I think I might have said it on the podcast before. It's one of my favorite quotes of all time. We were just talking about art, and it was a pretty lengthy conversation. In the end, you were like, just make the art you want to make and hope you're a good person,
Yeah, yeah.
because then you'll make good art. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, that's a really funny way. And so it's like, if social media is your canvas, hope you're a good person.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's that one way or another, like people always get revealed for who they are with enough interactions. There's no way of actually really hiding who you are.
Mhm.
And obviously, the best way to sort of do that is through consistent face to face interactions. But if you just have somebody interact with enough ideas, enough things over time, like you'll get a 98% accurate gauge of like who they are, what they're willing to tolerate, what kind of like stresses are going to push them in this way or that way. And like you were saying, going into the hidden implication of your disagreement is that yes, this should not be something you have to do, and it is a compromise that I am saying is a justification to take in the fallen world, where this is not something that you would do in the ideal situation. Um, and it is a step to take when you don't have the situation that is your birthright.
Yeah, I think it's coming from my background. I'm quite privileged,
Mhm,
not because I'm white, but because of the family I come from.
mhm.
And so, in that regard, it can be for me. It's so easy to just be like, well, just blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a lot more resources and I have a lot more people around me who are building me up. So it's really difficult. Um, he who has not left Britain doesn't know Britain.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing for me. Whereas like talking to other people who have more difficult backgrounds than me. Not that my life is like perfect or is always perfect, but rather talking to people who come from a completely different struggle is like, oh, I can see why you need to do this thing or
Mm-hmm.
need to do that thing. One of our more controversial things we talk about is like alcoholism is not a problem;
Mm-hmm.
it's a solution.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is somewhere else. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're drinking, it's not a problem. That's something else is going on that's driving you to this thing, and that's actually like your coping mechanism. And so understanding that there are similar things that we all have to enter into in the world, such as I would consider this one of those things where if you're in a situation where you can't prove to yourself, you can't enter a group and just throw down a portfolio and like, hey, here's me. You kind of have to have some presence. Facebook/Instagram stalking is healthy because
Mm-hmm.
that's how you really vet people. I've had lots of people back when I was more online tell me like, oh, I met you and then like I was scrolling through your blah 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 and you said this thing. What did you mean by that? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I didn't really mean anything by it because I was just like posting random stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that for a lot of people, that is going to be their way to see if you're the kind of person that they want in the friend group, or you're the kind of person that is going to be amenable to a certain community there.
Mm-hmm. Me remembering that this is a live stream and I can't just pause for 3 minutes to collect my thoughts and remember the thing that I was trying to say.
I'm patient. I'll wait. Chat will wait.
Chat will wait. Yeah, this is where it's the same idea behind people that me going through deathly illness, almost killing me.
Yeah.
I also recently had a bout earlier this week or last week to where I got normal sick, and the normal sickness caused me to neglect my more serious sickness therapies. And I had a bout, a flare up that was just as bad as 2 years ago. Like you see how skinny I am. I lost 13 pounds in about 3-4 days. So I am gaining that back, but it's in the idea of in the same way that you haven't experienced certain things because of the privileges afforded to you through your community and upbringing and stuff. People don't understand what it's like to have health issues until they've actually had health issues, and it's really easy for somebody who's just a sub 25-year-old guy who has generally had perfect health to kind of trivialize the issues that people go through if you've never actually experienced those. Whereas one of the biggest things that happens when you have very serious illnesses is that it essentially stops you from being able to do anything else, to focus on anything else. Like you have there's the RFK quote, which is that a healthy person has 1,000 dreams, a sick person has one.
Yeah.
To where you have a singular thought, a singular focus, and then you also barely even have the energy to focus on that one thing to begin with. Like doing even the most basic things of upkeep of things is all of a sudden the most Herculean task. Whereas when you have a whole ton of energy, the example of basically just washing the dishes becomes nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes just a thing that you're almost compelled to do when you have a certain amount of energy. Whereas not even washing the dish, but getting the sink away from your area into the sink is the biggest task you could possibly conceive of when you are like deathly sick and you don't have the energy.
Yeah, I think was kind of eye-opening. Just the last time we were together was when you were getting really, really sick. And of course, the summer really leading into that was something that was awesome getting to know you. And then when you were getting sick, that was one of my first experiences with like someone who really has health issues, you know,
Mhm.
especially to the degree you had. And it was just kind of like eye opening
Mhm.
in that regard. The amount of tasks that just become really, really difficult,
Mhm.
and the mental clarity, like trying to have the same kind of quality of conversation that we were having. And it's kind of like, that's too tiring.
Mhm.
It's like, I just had no idea about that sort of thing. So
Yeah, it's
I can
like
attest to the fact that you just don't even think about it. It's like, oh, you have a tummy ache?
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Whereas it's like, "Oh, you're trying to tell me to pick between, this sushi and that sushi?
Yeah. Just can't even do
Oh,
it. Yeah.
just kill me already. Like, I'll just die."
Yeah. No, it's really hard to get into other people's mindsets for that sort of thing. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Just heartbreaking.
Yeah, so in that sense, basically just, up your grind set, build a Twitter following,
Yeah.
uh, write an ebook, uh, sell online courses.
I mean, you could become a life coach, I guess.
Yeah.
It,
Sell a life course, coach. A life coaching course.
I did. I tried to do some life coaching, and it was okay. It was okay. Uh, but I have to be honest. So the coaching I did was for how I got into it was on a league team.
Mhm.
They were like, we want you to like life coach our diamond team out of French Canada
Mhm.
via like conference and whatnot. And I remember just kind of like I was doing okay. And it was only like a 6-week contract because they were doing this little tournament, B tier tournament thing. But they're gonna initially try to qualify for NALCS and all this stupid stuff, right? And so I'm talking with each of these guys and getting their stories. And I remember kind of after like the second week, just being like, I can't relate to these people at all. I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
no idea. Like, this is ridiculous.
Mhm.
These are kind of problems that like I can't even imagine having.
Mhm.
So not that like I don't have problems, just like, whoa, I don't even understand this. It's like, I just the our team chef made my poutine and it was like cold by the time I ate it, and that tilted me for the next go. I'm like, I don't know what I can't help you
Yeah, yeah.
because I just don't have that proclivity of like frustration about my food being cold or something. And
Mhm.
so getting other people's shoes goes back to kind of the first concept we were talking about, episode 1, which is the mindsets
Mhm.
and the worldview. If you can kind of get into other people's worldviews, it expands your horizon so much. And you don't have to adopt them as your own, but you have to be able to exist in them in order to talk to them, to really communicate with them. It's something you're really good at, which inspires me. I'm not as good at, but it does help you when you get into someone else's shoes. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, you can help this person, you can talk with this person, and you can actually find out what might be best for them rather than just assuming what's best for you is best for them.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Like a big thing is always just getting, buy-in and making sure that it's something that they would actually uh do, because if you're not trying to get buy-in when you're trying to help somebody with something, if that isn't your ultimate number one goal, is no matter what, I'm going to try to get them to buy into something that's different than what they're doing now, because what they're doing now is not working. If that's not your goal, then ultimately you're just talking for yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
talking for your own self-aggrandizement and enjoyment of, oh, look at me knowing all of these things and giving all of this advice that for this situation is entirely useless.
Yeah, and that's one of the natures of conversation that we have, going kind of back to lexicon and how we're programmed. Um, Especially in more modern media post 2010, there are so many shows that the whole premise of the show, and it's, episodic, right? The whole premise is such and such person has a really witty remark, and
Hmm.
they just show everybody else how much they know,
Hmm.
and they really put it to them. Their knowledge saves the day, or whatever. So we kind of have this idea that that's how life is.
Hmm.
And if you're consuming media, you're getting programmed with this, where you think life is about all the conversations you have and like proving yourself right, or being vindicated, or showing your knowledge or witty comeback. But the reality is, It's not how day-to-day life works.
Mhm.
It should be way more problem focused. There's a certain number of problems each day, and getting those problems solved should be the focus, not having a witty remark.
This goes back into the philosophizer degree person that you talked about, which is, oh, this is them recognizing a thing. Oh, this is that thing. This is Nietzschean. This is
Hmm.
Kantian. This is Pidifuwa,
Yeah. Eastern
Quebeca.
philosophers can't pronounce the names.
Yes. In that they're just analyzing, oh, this is the uh oh, this is this thing, this is that thing. In the same way of that should just be the beginning. You being right about something should just be a given. It shouldn't be something that you're overemphasizing as like, oh, look at I'm right, look at this thing, look at how great I am. It should just simply be, okay, here's the point. We're going over this point. Me being right doesn't need to be something that's beaten over its head with, in the same way that I don't need to beat you over the head with me showing that this novel concept that you talked about is actually talked about by Nietzsche in this one obscure book and not anything new whatsoever.
Yeah, which is also just another way to get around arguments. Is just labeling them and putting them into, it's like, oh, that's just Socratic.
Mhm.
Okay, but that doesn't actually help the conversation. If I say, oh, I really like to learn things or arrive at conclusions and help people along by asking them questions that then they have to answer the questions to, and when they answer the questions as a whole they progress further. It's like, that's just the Socratic method. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
And like,
What's your point?
yeah, so like, do you have something to add to this, or are you just stuck there with like, oh, I recognize that I'm
Mhm.
smarter than you because I recognize this thing.
Yes.
If I invented the Socratic method on my own, there, if I truly did, right, you shouldn't just be like, well, that's a Socratic method. You should be like, wow, you came up with that on your own with no outside influence. That's incredible.
Mhm.
That's such a useful thing. We actually have ways we can improve your methodology for that. Let's study this thing or that thing, and here's how you can utilize that.
Mhm.
But instead, it's just point and recognize. I feel like Reddit is just the perfect example of this kind of thing. The actually guys are just
Yeah, yeah.
always on that, and that's just not how conversation or how life should be lived. You should be trying to actually solve the problems, and if one particular philosophy helps with that, awesome.
Yeah, I agree. And in that sense, uh, I think that it's been real.
It's been real.
It's been real. So, that is the first streamed episode. Maybe the last streamed episode. We'll see. We'll see what the timing is. I'm probably just gonna end stream soon. End stream now. And then episode 4 will be released tomorrow. And I'll cut the intro out of this so that people can go back into the YouTube VOD. If you're on Twitch, the YouTube VOD will be posted as this is being multi-streamed to YouTube. Any last second things? Actually, go try to do a PhD in philosophy. PhDs are just like he said, a little bit more nicer words than I would use. It's all fugazi, nothing real to it. The entire point is to essentially just take something that is technically qualifying enough to get you to a PhD that is actually just a completely useless idea for the sole purpose of actually getting the PhD, and you don't actually do anything of value whatsoever. You're just there to be able to call yourself a doctor. And you look at the whole Dr. Mike Israetel thing, where uh, his PhD is being hyper scrutinized and looking into it, and you're realizing that it's just a complete piece of garbage. And people that are PhDs and people that defend the PhD system are saying, well, I mean, his school is accredited and he got it from that school, so therefore it's good. Completely sideswiping any of the criticisms, which just shows that the reality of the situation is that nobody who cares about the PhD system and the schooling credentialism system in general actually cares about doing useful things, because they're all useless people. In the same way that PhDs are useless, teachers are also useless. I hate teachers. They're the worst. PhDs and teachers the two most useless individuals in the entire world. Yes. So with that, I will be ending stream. So see you guys all next time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's the goodbye, good night, eat thing. Remember that? So it's goodbye, good
I
night.
remember this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're gonna punch the camera.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
All right. And with that being said, goodbye, guys. Goodbye and good night. Yeet.